Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Creating Better RAMS in Less Time, part of SHP's Webinar Wednesday series, broadcast by Informa Markets and sponsored by HandsHQ. My name's Ian Hart, I'm the editor of SHP and I'm going to be your moderator for the session today. Just a few brief announcements before we begin. Firstly, this webinar is designed to be interactive. The buttons at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's speakers, download and view resources, share the webinar on social media. You will also see a Q&A widget, which will allow you to participate in the session by putting your questions to the panel as we go. Please submit your questions as they come to you throughout the presentation, and we'll aim to get through as many as we can. There will also be an opportunity to get involved in some poll questions later on, so please do interact with the session and engage. A full recording of today's presentation will also be available for you to listen back to on demand, should you have to leave us for any reason, and that will be emailed to you, a link to listen back after the session. Now on to the presentation. Creating better RAMS in less time, where we're going to find out how implementing a cloud-based solution for your RAMS will save you time, allow you to engage with your entire team, keep them safe, and improve compliance. Joining me today are James Knott, Health and Safety Manager at SJ Easton Carpentry and Joinery and SJ Easton Fireproofing, Darren Johnson from Smith Brothers Contracting, and Mason Gregg, Senior Sales Executive at HandsHQ. To learn more about each of our speakers, please do click on the speaker widget on your screen. I'm going to start by talking to both Daryl and James about RAMS and how they use them within their business. So I want to ask each of you in turn, Darren and James, to come on screen and briefly speak about your the work that you do, the role within your company, how you work with RAMS, and look at a little bit about before and after where you were before digitalizing your RAMS and where you are now. So, Daryl, let's come to you first, please.
Yeah, I'm the Safety, Health, Environment, Quality and Training Manager at Smith Brothers. Smiths have been around since 1999, based in Elland, just outside Huddersfield, West Yorkshire, but the work throughout the UK, got projects up and down the UK. Predominantly, they do high voltage work, electrical, also gas storage, which is quite on vogue at the moment, obviously. They also do private networks like steelworks in Sheffield, other maintenance on transformers, things like that. I've been with the company for 2 years, and the model at Smiths is that the project managers are responsible for producing RAMS. Prior to putting hands in place, each project manager would really have their own sort of template for RAMS. So there were no consistency, and different jobs looked different because there were different templates in usually in Word. So that's where we were, Ian.
And James, same question to you, a little bit of an introduction and kind of before and after from where you are.
Good morning, Ian, and good morning all. I'm James, Health and Safety Manager. I have just over 9 years health and safety experience, ranging from retail, hospitality, and now construction. With SJE, or SJ Easton, we specialise in carpentry and joinery fit-out and passive fire protection. Before the use of HandsHQ, we were using the traditional method, creating RAMS, which included Word and Excel, which had to be amalgamated together prior to submission to our clients. We are still currently in our infancy days with HandsHQ, which will be coming up to a year in November. However, we have seen drastic change with the use of HandsHQ. The main being consistency of RAMS across the business and having had the function to send the RAMS to operatives digitally, and knowledge has really helped, especially during the COVID pandemic. Before having HandsHQ in the business, we were using Word and Excel document. Although we have a suite of generic RAMS, a lot of the time was required to make it site-specific, and working with an array of clients, all their needs were different, and the RAMS forever changing to meet our clients' obligations. So having HandsHQ has allowed a more consistent process, and I have the reassurance as a health and safety manager knowing that all the sites are the same when they're submitting and revising RAMS to the client or main contractor.
James, just touching on that, you mentioned your needs are different now, and I'm thinking obviously the current climate that we're in, particularly post Grenfell. How has that changed in terms of the requirements for your RAMS and the sort of requirements on you as a business in terms of producing them with all the changes in legislation around the Grenfell inquiry?
Yeah, I think a lot of the main contractors and clients now that they are kind of scrutinising the RAMS a lot more, believe it or not. And at one of our recent projects, the fact that we're using a HandsHQ has kind of allowed it makes life a lot easier. When I actually sat down with Mason a year ago and we kind of had a chat like this, it was music to my ears seeing HandsHQ kind of having a system in place that's just, you know, it's there. And as health and safety managers and professionals, we can really focus on the detail, the risk assessment and the methodology, the sequence of works, and kind of having that understanding and knowing what's included in the RAMS, yeah, and just having that reassurance, yeah.
Excellent. So I think both of you kind of said you went about writing your RAMS in a similar way beforehand. I'm interested, Daryl, coming to you first. How many were you writing, and kind of how long was that process taking you beforehand?
We were doing, on average, 6 to 10 sets of RAMS a week, Ian. And as I said, the model was the project manager would produce those RAMS, and I'd say probably half a day to produce them.
And James, same question to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily it was the project directors or the contracts managers producing the RAMS. However, I found that due to consistency and due to kind of a lot of copy and pasting generic, I didn't feel that when we were submitting it to the client or contractor, it wasn't to sufficient quality. So therefore, I kind of took over the process, and we've seen drastic change via the RAMS. So, you know, I think pictures speak 1,000 words, and with the easily functionality of dragging and dropping photos into HandsHQ allows this to be done with ease. And the fact that HandsHQ does all of the RAMS formatting, you know, as again, we can really focus on the detail of the RAMS and the risk assessments. Normally, our clients would scrutinise these RAMS. However, as I briefly said earlier, we from one of our recent clients, they got approved first time round, which is great.
And Daryl, I'm guessing you're both going to have a similar answer here, and it sounds like it's going to be largely around ease of the process and a time-saving thing. But in your opinion, why should you go about digitalising your RAMS, and how do you go about it, and what prompted the change for you?
To be honest, Ian, we were in two minds whether to digitalise at Smith Brothers. And then I went on a principal contractor course with the Association of Project Safety around November 19. On day 2, we had to do a presentation, and it had to be related to CDM. So I did mine on construction phase plans and RAMS, and showed the HandsHQ demo that's on the website, the short video there. It went down really well with like-minded safety professionals, and that gave me that final nudge in to go with Hands.
And James, what prompted your change, and how did you go about it?
I think for me, Ian, it was really having that kind of visibility as a health and safety manager. The fact that I can go in and log into HandsHQ and I can kind of understand, you know, what's been written, what's been said, and also I know who signed the RAMS off. I just kind of have that kind of confidence that signed it off. Also with HandsHQ, they also have a library of COSHH assessments, which you can make site specific as well. So I really like that function. As normally cost assessments are generic and just kind of attached to the RAMS at the end, but the fact that you can do it, make it site specific, just gives that a nudge as well. And I think it's really, you know, I found it difficult to get the buy-in from the directors, but once I got their buy-in and they could really understand it, it was a win-win situation.
Yeah, we might touch on that a little bit later on, because I think it's one of the big challenges that many health and safety professionals have, is actually getting that buy-in from the board. And I'd be interested to hear both your views on how you did that. But let's just bring in a question from the Barry here in the audience. Please do keep the questions coming in. I can see some coming in now, so I'm going to incorporate this one from Barry. James, I'll come to you first on it. How do you decide when to do when a risk assessment is necessary? Barry says everything carries a risk, but there has to be some things that are just common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really goes back to plan versus actual. So we go out on site and do plan versus actuals. So we can kind of review the process constantly when we're on site. And then we can really risk assess and kind of ensure that our RAMs and risk assessments are suitable and sufficient. And I think the fact that having HandsHQ, I can do a lot of the kind of auditing in the background. And when I am on site, I can actually focus on the observations and I can really get into the detail and carry out those plan versus actuals.
And Darren, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, pretty similar, Ian, actually. But we also carry out a daily risk assessment as well as the site-specific RAMs in hands. So, for example, weather, all that sort of thing, the changeable things. But yeah, I'd agree with everything that was said there. Yeah.
So James, let's just come back to that point on getting buy-in then. Were there any challenges for yourself when it came to getting buy-in from the board? And one of the things that we've seen quite a lot from the practitioners that I talked to over the last 18 months or so is actually the coronavirus pandemic and actually the interaction that health and safety managers are now having with boards almost weekly, monthly in those regular meetings, perhaps even more so than they were doing before. Do you think that that has brought the board and health and safety closer together and actually that process is going to be easier going forward?
Yeah, 100% there. Yeah, absolutely. I think the COVID pandemic, a lot of people listening will probably agree, it has really made our kind of, our profession's now on the pedestal. We're up there and we're being spoke about and we're in the limelight, which I think is so important. I think we needed it, if I'm being honest. So when I do go to the board with new ideas, incentives, suggestions, they really are taking it seriously and listening. And I think what's important, in health and safety is that we move with the times as well, and digitalising a lot of the compliance processes, whether it is RAMs, risk assessments, even inspections on site, I think is so important now. Absolutely. So they are more engaging and they are more willing to understand and listen. And when I approach with new ideas, they're really keen and eager to understand more.
And did you have any resistance at all, or was it a fairly straightforward process when you were implementing it within your own organisation?
Yeah, I think you do get a bit of resistance. Like a lot of things, Ian, it all comes down to cost and money, and it's weighing up the benefits of that. And with the help from Mason, he kind of I could kind of understand and have case studies together to kind of really kind of sell the system, so to speak. And once I kind of got over that barrier, I then introduced the directors to Mason, and then we kind of had another chat, and that was it. They were sold. So absolutely, there's still resistance out there, but if you don't ask, you don't get, do you? So I'm all for that.
Yeah, we'll come on to some of the benefits in a second. But Daryl, have you got any tips on kind of getting buy-in from the board and implementing some of your ideas, particularly around this kind of thing?
Mine was a different scenario, actually, and the operations director came across Hands, had a look at what sort of facility it was, and then passed it down to me to implement. So it was the end of, as I said, we did the course with the Association of Project Safety, and then it was towards the end of 2019 that Roshni from Hands came up to Huddersfield. Within a couple of days, we'd set up Hands how we wanted it. And then we thought it would be perfect for January after the Christmas break. So we had 2 sessions, 2 full days with the project managers. We incorporated all sorts of different things in there, CDM refreshes and all that sort of good stuff as well. Provided lunch, which went down well. But at the end of the day, Smith Brothers seemed to come on, to the next stage, to the next level. So yeah, it was pretty positive experience for us.
And I think this is there's a question from Mark here, which I think is probably I'll come to you with it, Daryl. Mark asks, how configurable is it to meet the needs of large construction projects, and how long does it physically take to produce a RAM now?
It's very configurable. You've got the generic template in the background, and then the guys just go in and make it site specific. There's 4 different pages. And I should say a couple of hours tops to produce now here.
Great, thank you. And so let's come back on to some of the things that, again, James touched on earlier. We're going to talk about a little bit about the benefits now. And obviously, we talked about sort of money being obviously a key factor in this. So what benefits, James, have you seen as a result of digitalising your RAMS in terms of efficiency and return on investment?
Yeah, it's just kind of, for me, it's the quality and the detail. I think that was what was lacking, and the consistency. So for me, it's that benefit, and it's also just that reassurance, what I've kind of echoed throughout, kind of what I've said, really. There, and also we've got the content library, which I really love. So what we're currently doing is currently amalgamating our kind of our Word and Excel documents into HandsHQ, and also it's a good refresh as well. So yeah, so far the benefits are certainly weighing, certainly are great.
And Daryl, benefits for yourself?
Again, agreeing with James there. It wasn't a commercial decision for me, and it was the quality of the documents and how consistent they look. I go up and down the UK, and we have the Health and Safety Board, and the RAMS look all the same on every job that we do. That said, as I've said earlier, we have reduced time in producing RAMS, and the other positive is the rejection rate is much lower now than it was 2 years ago.
There's another question from the audience here. Daryl, I'll come to you first on this one, and I think it touches back on what you were saying about project managers writing RAMS at the start. Has the digitalisation process enabled other people in the business to write RAMS other than just your project managers, and is that something that you have encouraged within your business?
It is, yeah. So our model is project manager and then a site manager who's usually on site every day. And the site managers now dip into Hands to make any day-to-day changes, amendments, and we certainly do encourage that, yeah.
There's another question I'm going to bring in. James, I'll come to you. This is from Chris. Once the RAMS are completed, do individuals have access to add and amend through risks identified with a dynamic risk assessment?
Yeah, so I think with that one, it comes down to briefing. So although the RAMS through HandsHQ allows that functionality to sign digitally, you still need to have that kind of conversation on site, that kind of briefing on the RAMS. And I think it's part of organisations' processes and procedures to ensure they are consulting and communicating, participating with their operatives on site to ensure they're executing what is said in the RAMS. So I think that's kind of a face-to-face conversation there, but the fact that the RAMS are in the RAMS are on their devices, their tablets, they're in their pockets, so there's kind of no excuse with regards to you haven't read it, you haven't understood it, it is there in front of you. So it's kind of having that there.
Great, thank you very much, both of you. We'll leave that there for the second, and we'll bring you both back in. Do keep your questions coming in for both Daryl and James, and also during Mason's presentation, which is going to happen in a couple of minutes. So keep those questions coming in throughout the presentation, and we can come back to some of those more at the end. I'm just going to bring in a couple of polls for you now to have a look at before Mason. I bring Mason in, so Mason will kind of comment on these results. But we're just interested to find a little bit more about the processes that you as an audience when it comes to writing your RAMS and how you go about that. So you should see a poll up on screen now, and you just click one of the options there, and we'll display the answers to what you are all saying after these three quick questions come out. So first of all, how do you write your RAMS currently? Is it Word and Excel like the two chaps used to do that we've spoken to here? Is it through software, or is it the old-fashioned pen and paper way? So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to vote on that. How do you write your RAMS? Word and Excel, software, or pen and paper? And then let's bring in question 2. So we've already heard from both Daryl and James on who writes their RAMS. Who writes RAMS within your organisation? Is it someone from the health and safety team? Is it your project managers or engineers, or is it a collaborative team effort? So that's the second poll question. Who writes your RAMS? The health and safety team, project managers and engineers, or a collaborative effort? So I'll just leave that there for another couple of seconds to give you time to vote on that one. And then we've got one final one coming up. And the final one is talking about some of the challenges What challenges do you have? What's the biggest challenge when it comes to your RAMS process? Is it a lack of engagement, copy and paste errors, time? Are they too generic, or is it client rejections? I'll just leave that there for a couple of seconds, and then we'll get the results up on screen. So what's the biggest challenge with your RAMS process? Lack of engagement, copy and paste errors, time, too generic, or client rejections? So let's have a look at what we're saying. So first question, a very large number of you currently doing that through Word and Excel, a massive number. Mason, I'll bring you back in to comment on these in a second, but yeah, huge number of people writing them through Word and Excel at the moment. The second question, fairly mixed bag there. Seems to be mainly a collaborative effort, but fairly even. And then finally, biggest challenges, a lot of people saying lack of engagement, time, and too generic. So I'm going to hand over to Mason now, who's going to briefly comment on those results, and then he'll do a short presentation. And as I said before, please do keep your questions coming in throughout Mason's presentation, and we'll ask them to the three gentlemen at the end in the last few minutes of the presentation. So Mason, over to you.
Thank you very much, and yeah, thanks very much, Ian and Daryl and James. Thanks for joining today. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So many of you on today. So hello. Thank you for putting aside some of your time today to jump on the webinar. As mentioned, I'm going to be running through, I saw a couple of questions that came through. I'm actually going to be running through a demo of HandsHQ, so showing you the process of how Daryl and James and many other HandsHQ customers are actually going through the process of generating and managing their site-specific risk assessments and method statements. Just wanted to just come back to yeah, a few of these sort of poll questions. Thanks for getting involved with this. It always helps when we hear from you all, especially because then I know definitely some areas to sort of focus on. But really interesting, but also very expected to hear that the majority of you are actually generating RAMS via Word and Excel. This is probably our, the biggest competitor out there for us is Word Excel. It's the way that businesses have been generating their RAMS for a very long time. That really the biggest change that has ever happened when it comes to writing risk assessments and method statements, obviously apart from the legislation and health and safety related stuff. But the biggest change for a lot of businesses that ever happened when writing RAMS is moving from pen and paper over to Word and Excel. And that was the first step of digitalization 15, 20 years ago. And not much really has changed since then. So we're getting to that stage where actually a lot of businesses want to be ahead of the curve and actually get involved and get more of the team involved with writing RAMS, which then comes on to, the next poll that we have here. So who actually writes your RAMS? Great to see that it's a collaborative effort. I think that what we tend to see is health and safety managers or the health and safety department as a whole often get sort of lumped with the job of generating the RAMS, mainly because they can't get the engagement from project managers, engineer, or contracts team, whoever it may be in your organization. Where actually it probably makes more sense if you can get those individuals involved. They're the ones that see in the risks, the hazards firsthand on site. But I appreciate with it being quite a manual process, it does become quite difficult to get people involved. And I actually did see a question that came through earlier around that as well. And then finally, sort of the biggest challenges. I would say these are 5 of the biggest challenges that I hear day to day. Obviously, lack of engagement, as I just spoke about just then, but also the fact that documents are too generic. Time, yes, as much as time is sometimes a problem. It's not the biggest issue because people want to put time into these documents to ensure that they are compliant, which obviously makes sense. But yeah, a lot of the time, RAMS documents are too generic and actually do end up getting sort of rejected by their clients as well. So today, what I'm going to be able to show you is actually how we can make the process for generating RAMS a lot simpler, allow you to have more time spent actually making these RAMS site specific. So we can forget about having to search for old templates, try and find content from a job which maybe was similar to something that you've done before, and take out all the sort of formatting time that is wasted and allow you to focus on the important part, which is obviously the content itself. Let me share my screen. I'm hoping that everyone's going to be able to see this. give that a couple of seconds. Hopefully that will load up. Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's
hopefully, yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so hopefully everyone should be able to see this. Obviously, any questions, feel free to keep throwing those into us. We're more than happy to answer those questions as we go throughout, but also towards the end, we'll have another Q&A session as well. But yeah, today what I want to show you is HandsHQ and the process that our sort of customers run through and the users of HandsHQ run through to create a site-specific risk assessment and method statement. Just to give you a bit of a background on HandsHQ, so we've been around now for about sort of 9 years, I think it is. When we started off, it was very much so working with very small businesses. You know, you're sort of like one man in a van businesses. But then we realized actually that this is an issue, or generating RAMS, the challenges that comes with writing RAMS is an issue for you know, huge businesses, international businesses across so many different industries. It really is a scalable challenge. So we quickly sort of picked out quite a few sort of larger customers, and then actually made us realize, yeah, this is a big problem across multiple different industries. So we have clients from all over the construction space, events management, working in the TV world. We have loads of different types of customers. If you need to write risk assessments and method statements, and this sort of 4-step process works for you, then our system would definitely be a great fit, as you do have that ability to customize the content, which I'll jump into in a moment as well. So what you're seeing at the moment is HandsHQ. HandsHQ is a web-based and a cloud-based system. So it essentially means that providing you've got an internet connection, you can log into the system across a multitude of different devices as well. So you could be in the office on your desktop, laptop, or actually out on site on your tablet. And that's where you can access and log into the system as well. So when you sign into HandsHQ, the first page that you come to is your projects page. This is where all of your different jobs or RAMS documents that you've created will live. You do also have the ability to create construction phase plans through here as well. The process that I'm going to show you for writing in RAMS is pretty much exactly the same for CPP, but obviously it just follows. I'll ask you a few more questions following sort of CDM, regs, and so on. But yeah, great. So when you log in, first page you come to, projects page. So projects is our terminology essentially just for RAMS or jobs. It might be slightly different for you, but that can actually be changed. When you log in, you see all of your different jobs. You can see our project name, whether this is a project which is currently live. If so, it would be green. If it's a project with a future start date, you'll have the yellow tab, and any old projects will actually be grayed out, but you can actually archive those projects. So we can see project name, client details, job reference number, when that document was last updated. We've got a link here to our risk register, which will allow you to actually update any individual risk assessments. And then if a project, contracts manager, an engineer, or whoever it is that's created that RAMS document would be able to see that actually the health and safety team, for example, have made an update to a control measure, and it will say here whether a risk assessment is out of date. We can also create an internal approval process. So this would actually be getting, you know, the project team involved, and this really comes back to that collaboration. They can write the documents, but then it can go through health and safety to actually, or their managers, directors, whoever it may be, to actually sign off on these RAMS documents to give it the sort of internal thumbs up. And then finally, you do have the ability to duplicate any sort of risk assessments. This function can be turned off if you wanted to, but this is really handy, especially for a lot of our customers who are doing very small, short turnover jobs. Might be like some maintenance jobs where they're literally going into a building and changing a light bulb, for example. They can duplicate a RAMS, change the sort of site details, add a bit of site specifics, and then they're done. Having said that, to create a new project of that size probably just it takes about the same amount of time as duplicating one anyway. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go into the process of actually show you how to create a new project. I'm going to do a bit of a Blue Peter moment now and show you one that I made earlier. But if you were to create a brand new project, you just hit new project up at the top. But let's have a look at this electrical and HVAC job that I've created earlier. We'll come on to the sort of project overview in a moment. But first, we'll jump into actually what I've created. And as Daryl mentioned earlier, about those 4 steps to create site-specific RAMS. So when you're creating your first project or a project, the first step that we come through is our project details. Very straightforward at this point. It is literally just filling in the blanks. Obviously, Darryl mentioned about how sort of bespoke and how sort of can you update the system and so on. As part of our onboarding process for our larger customers, if there is bits of information missing here, then obviously we can customize this for you. But yeah, we're just essentially adding in project name, reference numbers, start and end date, where you have a calendar which you can select from as well. And then as we go down, we can see our locations. So Smith Street here, for example. So really straightforward. We are literally running through and filling in the blanks at this point. We can then move on to our next step. And this is where we come on to our risk assessment library. So this is, I guess, the sort of secret sauce of HandsHQ. This is really where you're selecting, we're asking the user really to start considering the different hazards that are on site and build that sort of risk profile. All of our customers, as standard, regardless of which package, the lowest package or the highest package that you run with HandsHQ, can have access to all of this content. However, for a lot of our sort of larger customers, we can actually create a bespoke risk assessment library based off your current content. So we have a full onboarding team that would essentially take your content, take your information, and we can upload it all into the system for you. So this library will be categorized, all of your content rationalized as well to basically fit you as an organization. But just to give you an example of how this would work. So we're in the general category at the moment. Let's say arrival and departure from site is one of the first hazards or tasks that we've identified for our project. We can select this, we can then go into edit. Behind the arrival and departure from site, you'll then see all of the associated risk assessments. Now, this is the part where actually we can go ahead and make this site specific. But also going back to what Darryl and James both said, this is really where you start to see that sort of quality and consistency as well. Everyone, regardless of sort of knowledge, experience, is going to start off with the same high quality content each time. And it's just down to them to obviously jump into the system and make those site specific changes. So for example, electric shock from overhead cables, we've deemed actually that this isn't necessary on our site. So we can deselect it and it won't show up on our final document. However, as we go down, cross per full load, yes, this has the potential to happen. So we can leave it selected, then we can go into edit. And this is actually where we can make those site-specific changes. So unloading equipment, let's say it's a 2-ton pallet and it's on Smith Street. So we're making our changes, making our updates. We've got our hazards, our 5x5 risk matrix, our control measures, and then our residual risk as well. You can also change and update those persons at risk too. So once we have run through this, we can then update at the bottom here. We've now made these site specific. We can move back into the library and essentially go through and add those other sort of risks that are appropriate to our job, our project at hand. As you can see here, we've got a lot of information categorized in a whole bunch of different categories. When you click on the title, then it will drop down and give you a bunch of different tasks, different hazards as part of the category as well. So earlier I selected using ladders. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of content in here. Appreciate some of this content wouldn't be specific to you. We can get rid of it, and you can also add in your own content as well. So we've selected installing new lighting and removal of existing electrical services as well. Obviously, this is linked to the risk register. So this is sort of telling us here that this is the latest version, the most updated version that we're using as well. So once again, it's giving your engineers, your contracts managers, the teams out on site, whoever it may be, the confidence that they are using that sort of high quality information, which is being often managed and updated by internal teams, whether that would probably be health and safety. So once we've selected these, we've added our risk assessments, we can then move through to our next step. And this is where we come to our final step of the process. Not the final step, sorry. Getting ahead of myself there. The third step of our process, which is our sequence operations, essentially the way that you would like the team to go about completing the job in the safest possible way. The results that we see here are dependent on what we've selected on the previous step. So you don't have to go through a long list to try and find those. What we've selected on the previous step determines what gets pulled through here. So we selected electrical. Let's say, okay, the team are going to be installing lighting, that this is the safe sequence of works that I want them to follow to ensure that they are completing that job in the safest possible way. You do have the ability, once again, to make this site specific, deselecting any of the sequence that isn't applicable. You can move the sequence around. You can also free text in here as well. Also, if you wanted to make a more pictorial sequence, then you can do just by adding in your images in here. So this is great, and a lot of our customers use this, especially if there is any form of sort of language barriers on site. They're actually doing a step-by-step images for the sequences here. So once we've done this, we can then move through to our next step. And this is where we come on to, this is our final step of the 4-step process, which is our method statement. So once again, as per the other step, the last step that I just mentioned there, depending on what you've selected on the previous steps will determine then what gets pulled through ultimately on this final step as well. So description activity, we've just got this empty at the moment, just purely because I guess every job's different, but you can pre-populate text in there if you want. But as you go down, you can see that a lot of content, a lot of information has already been pre-populated for us. And this has been pre-populated based on the earlier decisions and selections that we've made. Obviously, any empty boxes you can free text in. You can free text in any of the boxes here. You can also add in any sort of tables if you wanted to as well. You've got the ability to add some images. I think I've done that already. If we scroll down. Yeah, so I've just added a screen grab of a map to the closest hospital, for example. But you are also able to upload any PDF documents here as well. So maybe if you've got a section which is called insurances, for example, you can upload your insurance documents or any certificates as well. So yeah, we can see that we've got an image here for our method of access. You can change the size of your image. I think I've done 2 different. So when we have a look at the final document in a minute, you can see, yeah, you can change the size. You can also flip the image upside down if you wanted to. But this is really handy, especially if, you know, for a lot of businesses that I've spoken with, you know, they'll go out to site, and when they go out to site to do their first sort of walk around, they take down a load of notes to then write the RAMS document when they get back to the office. But actually what a lot of our customers are doing is they're going there with their laptops or with their iPads and actually writing this document as they do their first walk around and take images and upload them straight to the RAMS document. So it's saving the amount of time that they would have to sort of travel back and then start writing it up and hoping that their notes make sense. So that's a big time saving that a lot of our customers have seen as well. Once again, as with all the other sections that I've mentioned, the text in here, so the headings and all of the text inside here can be customized, and we can do that full onboarding process once again for our sort of enterprise customers to add in all of your sort of content as well that you'd need to. Then got to the step where you can add your hazardous substances and also any Ppe requirements as well. I think we've got our 5 points of Ppe selected here as standard each time. But you do also have a section below where you can add in your specific Ppe requirements. So if there's a type of face covering or type of boot that you want the team to wear, you can add that below. So that is the 4-step process. So when we go to next, because I've already created this document, and we're going in and editing it. I know someone mentioned a question earlier about do the teams have out on site have access to be able to jump into RAMS? Yes, they do. But what's great as well is because each individual that would jump on the system has their own login, it almost leaves like an electronic footprint across the system. So you know who's updated what and who's changed what information. So let's say health and safety managers already made this. I jumped into the system and I'm now editing it with more up-to-date information for the project. So I could just say that we've added new risk assessment plus method statement as well. So we can then move through to our next step. So what's really handy about this is we've got this activity tab and you can see exactly how that document has changed over time. So you can see what revision it is, who's updated it, date, timestamps as well. So really great for that sort of document control and so on. But you've also got the ability to download previous versions as well. So touch wood, doesn't happen, but if there was ever a near miss or an incident, you can download those old documents and actually show the proof of how that document has changed over time as well. A few other tabs just to show you here as well. Obviously, James mentioned earlier about COSHH. You've got the ability to upload a COSHH assessment. We've got a shared library. There's over 10,000 substances in here at the moment. Very straightforward. You search for the substance. It's going to ask you a few questions about the use of that substance, and it will create for you a COSHH assessment, which I'll show you in a second. If something's missing from the library that you need to have in the library, you send us the SDS sheet, and we can actually upload that into the system for you as well. And then obviously in the Documents tab, you can jump into any section of that 4-step process at any point, which will allow you to actually update specific information in there. And then finally, we've got our personnel. So this is actually where we can forward out this document to different individuals within our business. So we can see here that myself and also Alan, I've said I'm a health and safety director. Alan's our electrical engineer. we do have another side of the system as well, which I won't touch upon today. I'm sure we'll do another webinar at some point, which is our training register. Effectively, it's a replacement for your very manual spreadsheets for your training matrix. But this is actually being pulled through at this point to say the training status of our individuals. I will briefly show you what that looks like as well. But when we add our individuals to this document, what we're actually able to do is we can actually send this document, this RAMS document, out to be signed off by the team, which James mentioned that they're utilising at the moment as well. But essentially what that's going to do, there's two ways. You can send it to a mobile, and they can read through the RAMS, accept it, and then sign off on it. Alternatively, someone can log into the system, they can find their name and kind of find their beautiful picture, as we can see there, with the signature in the system as well. So you always know, essentially, you doing your due diligence, making sure you're getting the right people sign off the right documents. We all know that, unfortunately, it's not as easy as that when it's pen and paper based. And, some people do sign off for their mate who's running 10, 15 minutes late. So it's just making sure that, you're mitigating that risk as much as possible. Up here as well, we do have our submit for approval. So once that RAMS document has been created, you do have the ability to send it out to an individual who can then submit this for approval. So I would then receive an email to say, Joe Bloggs has created electrical and HVAC RAMS. Could you please approve? I could just come in here and say, yes, best RAMS ever. And then we can just approve that document. So now whoever's created that document can see on the system that actually it's been approved and sort of given the internal thumbs up. But let's show you the actual final document itself. So we can hit this button here, which is preview. What this is doing now is pulling together all of that information that we have that we've essentially put together throughout this, and it's creating for us our final documents. Obviously, you'd have your own logos, business information within here as well. The revision number updates itself automatically each time. And then as we scroll down, we come on to our sort of method statement, sequence operations. All of our text is formatted for us, so we don't have to waste time, once again, copy, pasting, dragging, dropping, trying to sort out formatting. Our images get pulled through as well. We all know the struggles that it is when you drag and drop an image into a document and your text blows up and you've got to spend 20 minutes trying to get back to where it was. You can add multiple images as well, so you can have a row of 3, 4 images in here too. As we come off the back of the method statement, we come to our risk assessment. 5x5 grid gets explained for us. And then our risk assessments are laid out really quite nicely, really easy to read. I've had the pleasure of seeing thousands of different risk assessments from so many different businesses. I know we've got quite a few consultants on the call as well. I'm sure you share the same thoughts of me. They all look so different. But one thing in common that I see a lot is just how much text is thrown onto one page. And unfortunately, there's absolutely no way that any of those individuals out on site are going to pick up that RAMS and read it. But we just wanted to make ours flow as easy as possible. You can pick them up and really understand exactly what's going on. But if I just shoot off the back of the risk assessments, we can see that we come to our signature page. So my signature's in, we're just waiting on Alan's for the moment. We can print it off and you can obviously sign it manually as well. And then below this, we also have our COSHH assessments as well that's been created for us that we've added. So that's the actual document itself. Really just the last couple of things just to show you. You do have the ability to email this straight out from HandsHQ to your customers, to your clients. So just add in who it's going to, and then it'd just be add your body of your email. You can also decide whether you want to send a training report as well. The training report will essentially be a report of that individual with all of their sort of certificates we can also download from here, which I'll show you quickly. So when you've got those individuals in the background on your training matrix, it's going to pull through their certificates and create a really straightforward, easy sort of training report with all of their certificates within the system for you as well. So I know this is becoming more of a requirement from a lot of, especially sort of, throughout COVID, that a lot of clients are wanting to see evidence of training. So you're able to download that if you've got the link to the training register, which is up here under personnel. But yeah, I mean, that's quite a quick run through of the system. I don't think there's too much to show you here. One other thing that might be worth showing you just before we do jump back to the Q&A is that for much larger businesses where you have multiple divisions or group companies, there is the ability to split HandsHQ up into different divisions. Each division can, might be because of regionally, you work in different countries. It could be that you've got the different disciplines across and different trades that you work in across the group as well. So you do have the ability to switch between each division. Each division can have their own content library, and you can also set restrictions as to who can access what. So you might just want one team for HVAC, one team for electrical, one team for civils, for example. So it's really got that flexibility to do that as well. But yeah, hopefully I've answered quite a few of your questions there just by showing you the system. Obviously, any questions that you do have, feel free to whack those into the chat now, or obviously find us on handshq.com and get in touch, and we're more than happy to answer your questions. But Ian, I think I'll hand back to you now. Let me stop sharing my screen just to answer a few questions that I'm sure we have.
Great, Mason. Thank you very much. Very interesting indeed. As Mason said, we've had a good few questions in, but please do keep those coming. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes to go through some of those now. So, Mason, I'm going to come to you with this one. This is from Mary, and she asked, can you upload training certificates, for example, working at height training certificates?
Yes, Mary. Hello. Thank you for your question. So there's two ways of doing that. So on the method statement section, you might have a section which is called training, and you can upload those. However, if you do have access to the training register, each individual will have their own profile, and on there, you'll be able to upload the different courses that they have completed, and you can upload the certificates in there as well. And obviously that's going to send you email notifications as and when training is due to expire as well. So yes, you can upload that and link them to your RAMS documents that you create as well.
Thank you very much. James, I'll come to you with this one first. Audrey asks, how do you overcome sites where electronic devices are not permitted?
That is a good question. Electronic devices not permitted. I think it's really going back to the main contractor or client and having that conversation to really understand. And I no doubt that's kind of covered probably kind of contractually in kind of contract documents really. So I think it's kind of doing a recce first, understanding that, and then you can kind of implement or then put that into HandsHQ depending on the outcome.
Darryl, have you got anything to add there?
Yeah, we've actually got a coma site in Middlesbrough, Ian, that we're working on currently, and we print them off at the top of the site and then take hard copies. Obviously, any revisions are made at the top of the site, and then the new copies printed off and taken down to the site office and welfare cabin.
Thank you very much. Mason, I'm going to come back to you. We've talked to both Darryl and James briefly on this, and I think it goes back to a little bit about getting buy-in from the board, but I wonder if you had any tips from your end. This is a question from Stephen, which says, how do I get the management team to engage in something when they're not interested in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we hear quite a lot. Unfortunately, there does tend to be a bit of a disconnect between health and safety and the board of directors. It's what we see all the time, unfortunately. A lot of the time, directors, obviously, they're just interested at the bottom line. How much does something cost? And I know there's been a few questions about cost, which we can come to in a bit. But yeah, what we tend to see is sometimes decisions are made because they're quite sort of reactive. Both James and Darryl, thankfully, have been very proactive with finding a solution. But a lot of the time, directors will turn around because either RAMS have been scrutinised by the client. There could be a risk of losing a contract, or someone's been hurt and the RAMS aren't going to stand up in court, for example. And that's where they make the decision, actually, we need to change. So sometimes it is worth putting these stories that you hear in every day in front of your directors, because they do happen, unfortunately, as much as we don't want them to. But once again, I do think it is about chatting to other businesses, similar businesses in the industry, and finding what they're doing and what works for them. We've got quite a few customers that chat to one another to sort of share best practice. So I think that's my biggest sort of bit of feedback there is chat to other businesses, see what they're doing, see what works for them, what doesn't, and then hopefully you'll be able to sort of pass those success stories on to sort of higher management as well.
Thank you very much. Darryl and James, I'll come back to you guys on this one. Darryl, I'll come to you first. There's a question from Mark, who asks, what improvements have you seen in work as planned against work done since using this software? And do you have any data or stats that you can use to back that up?
I've got no stats, Ian, but I think the biggest one is the time of the project managers. We do exactly the same as James alluded to there. We'd go out on site when it's brownfield, log all the risks on the on HandsHQ, take photographs, upload the images. So yeah, it's just a time saving element, Ian, that we like.
Thank you. Anything to add, James?
Yeah, just really echoing what you said there. Yeah, just kind of very much time saving and kind of consistency as well. Yeah, it's not really much more to add.
Thank you. Mason, let's come back to you with this one from Clive, who asks, how does a subcontractor present RAMS to a principal contractor? And then how does the PC record or file that interaction?
Yeah, good question, Clive. Hello, thank you for the question. Yeah, so as I showed you towards the end of the demo, you've got the ability to email the RAMS document directly from HandsHQ to your PC or to your client, whoever that RAMS document needs to be sent to. And then within the activity log, you can actually see when that RAMS document or CPP, whatever you've created, has actually been sent out to that individual. You can see in their email address in there as well. It works a little bit like WhatsApp, where you can see once it's been sent, when it's been received, you get a couple of ticks when it's been sort of opened up as well. So you can always see the sort of life cycle of that RAMS document actually making it to principal contractor or your client through the system.
Thank you. Mason, I think this is probably aimed at you as well from John, who asks, can the system be set up to facilitate a large construction site? Principal contractor and contractors all using the same system efficiently to deliver and review RAMS and accessible to approved personnel like the H&S manager to audit and review?
Yeah, good question. So we do have a couple of sort of companies that do use it in this way, where they pull in sort of different subcontractors and principal contractors as well. I would say, though, that actually our system has been created for a business to use individually by themselves. The only reason why I say that is, you start bringing in subcontractors into the picture, and they might start creating RAMS which aren't for your construction site, but for another job that they've won with another client elsewhere. But it is possible, but I wouldn't say it's the best use of the system in the world. I think it would be more sort of pointed at a business using it for themselves to then be able to sort of push this out. Having said that, we do have a lot of our customers that turn around to their subcontractors and have said, look, this is your RAMS are very bad. They look like they've been written on the back of a scrap of paper last night. This is a good way for you to be able to sort of improve that quality, consistency, and actually pass in HandsHQ onto some of those subcontractors as well. So as much as the systems won't be linked yet, there is the ability for them to generate RAMS in the same way. And once again, having that sort of uniform approach and also final document that's created as well.
Thank you very much. Darryl, I'll come back to you first on this one from Michael. Touches on something we spoke about earlier, but Michael asked, how long on average does it take for individuals to become proficient in producing RAMS digitally? And is there any training involved that you need to show your staff the new process?
Yeah, it horses for courses, Ian, obviously, IT skills and the likes, but within Hands, you've got the robot if you want to ask any question, and there's also a library suite of procedure documents, so we found that very useful. But to be honest, Rosh from HandsHQ came and sat in on both of our initial kick-off training sessions, and if we do have any questions, we can feed it through that robot, but I should say a couple of 3 attempts in and they're up and running.
James, a similar sort of theme along the same lines of the question. I'm interested, how receptive were the rest of your team in terms of utilising this? Obviously, a lot of people not keen on change, and so how hard was it to get buy-in from the workforce into changing the method?
To be fair, they were really up for it. Anything that kind of what I've noticed since my 3 years in construction actually is when the operatives are going onto site, they're signing so much. They're signing so much, and they're kind of they've got to go onto site. They've got to attend a main contractor induction. Then they've got to go back to the subcontractor where they're working. And they've got to sign loads of forms. So it's all about kind of making that process slightly easier, smaller, and kind of removing it from site if you can. So sometimes I can send the RAMS to the operatives before they've even gone onto site. So they can almost read it in an environment where they can do it and they can kind of absorb it, rather than having to kind of understand a 30-page document in kind of 10 minutes and then sent off to work. So if we can remove it from site, then we absolutely can. So it's kind of making that kind of induction onboarding process a lot easier as well.
Great, thank you, James. Probably got time for a couple more. So Mason, I'll come to you with this one from James. How do the working teams sign on to the document, and is this recorded on the issued document?
Good question, James. Thanks for getting in touch. Yeah, so we've got a couple of different ways of doing that, essentially 3 different ways. 2 digital methods and one which would just be an empty blank sign-off sheet on the back of the document. We do have a feature which is called digital signatures and also in-person signatures. So digital signature would be where the RAMS, once it's been created, can be sent out to your operatives that are out on site. It could be a real long list, it could be one person, but they're essentially receive an email on their phone or on their laptops. If it's on their phone, it'll pop up and they read through the RAMS document, flick through, read through it, hopefully spend the amount of time reading it as you'd want them to. And then when they get to the end, they can accept that document, turn the phone to the side, and they'll be able to sign off like so. Those signature and a date timestamp would be stored within the system. The other method is if you've got a computer out on site, the site manager or whoever's doing the induction to the RAMS runs through the RAMS. Each individual then can come up to find their name if they haven't signed off on their phone already, and then they can sign their details. It's actually going to take an image of them as well. So not only do you have a date, timestamp, signature, but you've also got an image of that individual. As I mentioned in the demo, just mitigating that risk as much as possible.
Mason, this is probably another one for you from Gary. Is it quick and easy to update the background generic control measures when required?
Yeah, great question, Gary. Morning, thanks for joining. So essentially, we've got 2 features, one called risk register, one called content editing. But yeah, you've got the ability to jump into the sort of back end of the system, if you like, and actually update those control measures. And it's really straightforward, really easy to do. What we can also do is restrict as to who within the business can access that. So we tend to say only admin to be able to have the ability to actually update the content. Therefore, you don't run the risk of when your engineers or project managers coming in and changing the content. You've got the ability actually to do that yourselves. And when you are updating content via the risk register, once again, you're going to have a full activity log of exactly who's updated that, the sort of generics, if you like, and when they've done that as well. And you can set review dates for that as well.
Great, thank you, Mason. Just finally, you touched on it earlier on, probably without going too deep into specifics. We had a few questions about cost. How can people reach out to you and the team in terms of finding out more in terms of cost, maybe getting a more detailed demo? If you can just provide a few ways that people can get in touch with you, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've seen quite a few questions about cost. Obviously, that's the $1 million question. Thankfully, it doesn't cost $1 million. You'll be happy to hear. But yeah, we've got so many different packages with different features, different usage levels, going from £30 a month all the way up to tens of thousands per annum. It really does depend on what your usage is going to be, user numbers, features, and so on. We do run online demos too. So either myself or the rest of the team can always do an online demo, show you exactly the system, understand your needs a little bit further, and then from there we'll be able to give you an exact price actually of what your package is probably going to look like to sort of fit your needs as well. So yeah, feel free to get in touch with us. If you just go on our website, HandsHQ.com. We run free trials as well. So if you wanted to get access to a free trial, then feel free to jump on our website. I think we might see if we can send a link through the chat as well. But yeah, feel free to sign up for a free trial. You have access to the system and be able to sort of create RAMs or CPPs through that, and hopefully give you a good idea of exactly how the system works.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I think Mason just touched on it. There is a link in the resources tab of the session today where you can go and find the link to that free demo. So do check that out after the session. That is unfortunately all we have time for today. If you missed any of the session or want to share that with any colleagues, you will be sent an on-demand link shortly after this presentation within the next 48 hours or so. So keep a lookout for that in your inbox. It'll also be available on SHP, where you can go back and click on that on demand from later this week. So if you missed anything, please do go back and rewatch that. I'd like to say a huge thank you to James Knott, Darryl Johnson, and Mason Gregg for their time this morning, and to our sponsors, HandsHQ, and thank you to you very much for tuning in and participating so well in the session. We had really great engagement, so thank you very much. As I mentioned at the start, this webinar is part of SHP's Webinar Wednesday series, a series of interactive health and safety webinars throughout September and October, giving you the opportunities to learn about a range of key industry topics. Next Wednesday, on September the 29th, we're bringing you a session where we will discuss the ongoing conundrum around the culture surrounding safety, and that is at the same time in this slot next Wednesday, so please do tune in for that. As I said, again, the rest of the programme can be available on SHP Online. There's a link in the resources where you can go and sign up to all of the sessions in one go, in one very simple and easy form. And that will also allow you to register for the on-demand version of this as well if you did miss it. So it's all pretty straightforward to sign up for that session. Until next week, my name's Ian Hart. I'm the editor of SHP. Thank you very much all for your time this morning, and see you next time.
Thanks very much, everyone.